United States Bullion Depository, also known as Fort Knox, is a fortified vault facility located within the United States Army post at Fort Knox in Kentucky, just south of Louisville. Now, according to the U.S. Mint, current gold holdings at the depository are 147.3 million ounces, which is about half of the Treasury's stored gold. The depository is used to store a large portion of United States official gold reserves. Now, Fort Knox is so secure that during World War II, as a precaution, original copies of the Magna Carta, Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, the U.S. Constitution, and Declaration of Independence were actually stored there. Construction of the U.S. Bullion Depository was completed in December 1936, and the director of the Mint and U.S. Treasury was placed in charge. Known building materials include 16,000 cubic feet of granite, 4,200 cubic yards of concrete, 750 tons of reinforced steel, and 670 tons of structured steel. All this for a two-story building. Sounds pretty secure, right? Well, it's not like you'd be able to dig your way under it anyway. After all, it's considered one of the most secure buildings in the world today. And there's been a persistent rumor that they built Fort Knox as a Trojan horse type of decoy, and we stored the real gold consignment elsewhere for security reasons. This makes some sense, I guess, because we'd be splitting the storage locations into smaller units, which would mitigate the risk if a single vault was ever breached and the gold taken. Now, if we look back in time, we see that the first gold shipment arrived at Fort Knox in 1937, with the 1st Cavalry Regiment guarding the delivery. Now, with the outbreak of World War II in Europe, the Army created the Armored Force at Fort Knox, and thousands of soldiers were ordered there and introduced to the military tank. Now, in addition to the thousands of pounds of steel and stone, there's an entire battalion of U.S. Mint police that cover the depository. And let's not forget, it's in the middle of a U.S. Army base, so there's plenty of protection. Now, for obvious reasons, the facility doesn't generally allow visitors. As a matter of fact, the depository has only broken their visitor policy 3 times, and the first was in 1943, when President Franklin Roosevelt conducted an inspection tour, not an audit, an inspection. The second was in 1974 to a group of journalists and a congressional delegation, so they could see the gold reserves, but again, they didn't see the entire vault, nor was it an official audit. Now, that actually took place in, just like in current times, there are persistent rumors that the gold had been removed. And the last visit was in 2017, when the Treasury Secretary Besant visited with Kentucky Governor Matt Bevin and congressional representatives. Secretary Besant has said he would happily arrange an inspection for any senator who's interested in seeing the vaults. So there is some transparency there. How much they'd follow up on that, who knows? If they honor it, fantastic. If not, it would figure. Now, bear in mind that these were just visits, not audits. It's assumed that the last actual audit of the depository was all the way back in, get this, 1953. And it was by no means a comprehensive audit either. Another allegedly took place in 2011, but there's very little to no documentation on it. Now, all that said, Secretary Besant says a full audit is conducted every year.
Right.
And that all gold is present and accounted for. So it goes without saying, a large quantity of the nation's gold is well protected and safe, but is it still really there? And if it is, how much of it? What would the fallout be if Elon Musk was to find, hey, the depository isn't holding what it says it is, or worse yet, has nothing at all? And if there's gold in the vaults, is it even ours? Or some other country's gold? What if the gold there is just gold-plated base metal bars? Well, we'll go through some of these scenarios and try to make some sense of it all. And all that said, let's go ahead and roll this thing.
We're actually going to Fort Knox because I want to see, do we have the gold? Do we still have whatever it is, tons of gold? I hope we do. Wouldn't that be disappointing? Fort Knox. You grow up hearing about Fort Knox. You can't get in. You can't even see it. Nobody sees it. You go there and the place is dry. Would that be terrible?
So there was talk on X, formerly Twitter, that Fort Knox should be audited, and Elon Musk became involved. As you know, President Trump has implemented a task force named DOGE, or Department of Government Efficiency, and he appointed Musk as the leader of that group. Now, while I'm sure Elon would love to do an audit, as would President Trump, there are a few issues facing that task, the main one being the fact that, hey, non-depository employees have only been allowed access to the facility just 3 times in the last 82 years or so, as we covered in the intro. As you can see, this isn't something that happens regularly. Presidents have been turned away, senators turned away. It is what it is. But according to CBS News, apparently Musk is actually going to be granted access, so we'll keep an eye out on that. But what's he going to find, guys? What's he going to find? Would it be just a quick look or a full audit? What about testing the gold for purity? And would the gold be counted to ensure it was all there? Now, in that regard, the Mint does say that only very small quantities have been removed in the past to test the purity of the gold during regularly scheduled audits. Except for these samples, no gold has been transferred to or from the depository for many, many years. Now, while I don't personally think a full audit with testing will ever be allowed for someone from outside to see, it's sobering to think about the fallout the United States would incur if the gold was proven to be gone. Some examples. Number one, missing gold could cause a collapse in the dollar and U.S. economy. Even though the dollar has no gold backing anymore, it still benefits from the assumption that Fort Knox holds substantial reserves. And if that turns out to be untrue, confidence in the dollar could take a major hit. Number two, in recent years, foreign countries have been withdrawing their gold reserves from Fort Knox. If the U.S. has significantly less than expected, or if there's any discrepancy between the reserves in Knox and the figures that have been reported over the years, it could send shockwaves through the global markets. Number three, if doubts emerge about U.S. gold holdings, we could see a surge in demand and prices for physical gold. Now, central banks and investors would likely move even more quickly than they already have to secure their own reserves. You guys know central banks have been eating it up, and that would get even worse. With gold almost assuredly hitting $3,000 an ounce in 2025, it could push the gold metal to unobtainium status for us common stackers. Now, meanwhile, inflation is still running hot, and now this Fort Knox story could add another layer of uncertainty to the landscape with gold. And we all know that investors flock to gold when things get squirrely in the world. Number four, lastly, it could further erode U.S. citizens' trust in our government. Yeah, there's a shocker, right? Now, we're getting ready to close this video out, but please keep in mind that those scenarios I gave you, those are all worst-case scenarios. There are other schools of thought by economists who are saying even if the gold came up missing, the effects would be minimal. It may sound insane, but let's drill down their thinking really quickly. These folks are going to tell you to take any dollar bill. What do you see? Well, you see Federal Reserve note, and you also see this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private, yada yada. This is the crucial part. Since the dollar was taken off the gold standard in 1971, no relationship between the U.S. dollar and gold exists. The only connection is that in the United States, they state the gold price in dollars. In India, they state it in rupees. In the UK, it's quoted in pounds. You get it. But the dollar just isn't dependent on gold anymore. It's just paper. So these economists believe if it was discovered that there was no gold in Fort Knox, in theory, it would have little effect on the markets or the U.S. currency. The gold in Fort Knox never trades. This is what they're thinking. It never trades. So it's not part of the quote-unquote pool of gold that's known to exist and be exchanged on a daily basis. That pool of gold circulating in the market, that's what prices are based on, not Fort Knox gold, the circulating gold. In other words, with all this, expect the unexpected and expect nothing at all. It's not like the questions about Fort Knox are new, right? The doubts have been circulating for decades. And even if outside personnel are allowed in, it's very easy to make things appear the way our government wants them to appear. Without a physical count or testing random bars, no outside visitor possesses the knowledge to walk away with a feeling that they're satisfied with what they've been shown and that all's well in the vault of gold. They're just not qualified. They don't have that knowledge. They're not metallurgists. They don't know this stuff. So that's what makes it tough on them. Now, lastly, I did a poll on how everyone felt about the gold in Fort Knox being there or not. So a quick shout out to everybody who participated. I really appreciate it. And here are the results really quickly. 4% voted yes, there's gold in Fort Knox, but it's not ours, or it's gold-plated fakes. 4%. 19% voted yes, it's always been there, and the stated amount is correct. 20% voted nope, it's been gone for years. And a whopping 58% voted there's some gold, but not as much as they're claiming. Yikes. That poll speaks volumes, and The people have spoken. Again, big thanks to everybody who participated in that. All right. There you have it, folks. So no one can say for certain about what would happen if it was discovered that gold in Fort Knox wasn't there anymore. Except the trust factor. That's a given. People are already leery of our government, and an event like that would be a huge, monstrous blow to U.S. confidence, regardless of how the markets react. Take that right out. Then and only then will we find out which way the domino effect would possibly take us. So based on that, I feel like the government would do whatever it has to do to make things appear kosher at the depository, if they weren't already, and just to make it look right for anybody who's visiting. You can look at this thing like aliens. If the government has proof they exist, they simply couldn't release that kind of information to the public because, think about it, mass hysteria would ensue, right?
Open fire!
This is a very similar situation. So, one thing that the Mint director has said is audits are conducted every year, and don't worry, everything's there. But when nobody's allowed in there, and I mean for obvious reasons, it's a secure facility with allegedly a crap ton of gold. So, I mean, I think it's the right thing not to have just anybody waltzing on in. But that's part of the problem. Not having access feeds rumors that have been going around for decades. It is what it is, right? So what do you guys think? What are some potential fallouts, scenarios that could go down if the gold came up missing? Be sure to leave a comment down below and let me know what your thoughts are. You guys know I love going through them, so make sure you sound off. That's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Silver and Gold Stack Attack. And if you made it this far, well, kudos to you. I'll definitely catch up with you in the next episode. But in the meantime, you gotta know what's up.
What do you want to do with your life?
I want to stack.
Damn right. Get stacked. Stay safe and be well, everyone. I am out. Well, yeah. Peace, folks. Have a fantastic week ahead. And I'll see you next week.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.